I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
You're in big trouble though, pal. I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast?
This guy's either gonna think, here's another kid with a fake ID, or here's McLovin, the 25-year-old Hawaiian organ donor. Okay, so what's it gonna be?
I am McLovin.
Hello?
Why don't you want to talk to me?
Who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
Hey, welcome back to the J&Z podcast. This is episode 17.
17.
17.
Still can't believe it.
And I don't know who that voice is because this is now the J podcast. Czar's gone. I'm sorry, Belgium listeners. He's gone.
I'm sorry, TikTok. If you please follow our TikTok as well, please.
He's gone. He's gone completely. No, this week it's a little bit different. We don't have a guest on this week.
Going old school.
We're going old school. We're going new school, which is not at all the movie we're going to be watching. We watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Insert clip.
It's probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
When I think of that movie, I think of you because of the amount of times that you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it an unhealthy amount of times.
Here's a first quick question. Better than Top Gun?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
That was really quick.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, I usually start the podcast off with a story, so I think I'll do that in terms of why I wanted to pick this movie. So we were throwing a party at my house, and we had Ferris Bueller on in the background. And it's just one of those things where it's just like you'd have The Office on, or just kind of ambiance and the party. And there's also music going on and stuff like that. But I was just at the point where, like, I was feeling good.
You were.
I'll say, and I was zoned into the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And
it was loud, too. Like, there was really loud noise around you.
Yeah.
But you were just like...
zoned in. Yeah. And I just remember quoting specific parts of the movie to your girlfriend Jordy, who was sitting on the couch.
She was actually on the last episode, Last Jedi. Please check it out.
Yeah, last week. And I just I feel like almost every single scene in this movie is iconic. And specifically the scene with Ferris where he calls Cameron to get him to come over and pick him up in his car. And Cameron's actually sick in bed.
Yes.
He's like, I'm dying. I'm going to die. And it's the scene where we're sitting on the couch, and I looked at Jordy and I was like, he's going to keep calling me and he won't leave me alone. And he turns on his car and he starts revving it and yelling and punching the side of the seat. And then he turns the car off, he gets up and he walks away, but then he starts jumping up and down in anger. And I was quoting that whole fucking thing. And Jordy's like, how many times have you seen this movie?
My favorite thing about that was you looked at me and I don't know the line, but he says something and then he goes, or it's like, oh, it's childish, but you lick your palms.
Yeah, so it's the very beginning of the movie where his parents come in and they're like, oh, Ferris, you don't look very good. And he's like tying up all of his contraptions as he's like basically telling the audience how to get out of school.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's childish, but when you're bent over, moaning and wailing, you lick your palms.
But I just remember like everybody was yelling. People were taking shots, playing beer pong.
Yeah.
Like it sounded like a frat house. And you just turned to me and you're saying it as Ferris is on and you're like, you lick your palms. I was like, subtitles aren't on right now.
No.
Like this is amazing.
But
we could just mute it and have you say everything, just running back and forth.
just look at someone else and go, you could do a blow dry to your forehead. Scary mom, though. You go to the doctor's office. What's worse than the doctor's office? High school. I don't know. I think this movie in particular, the reason why it's so like iconic to me is because I watched a lot during high school. And I feel like a lot of people, when they see it in that like age group, Ferris Bueller is like literally the kid that everyone wants to be.
Right.
Like, and it's like
I mean, hell, they made T-shirts called Save Ferris.
Yeah. But one of the questions I was going to ask you is like, was there anyone you went to high school with that was like a close representation of that person? I'll give you a second to think about that. Because the reason why I think I want to ask that question is because I don't think it's not plausible.
No.
Like there's not ever going to be someone that's literally friends with everyone everyone likes in that. Like, I mean, maybe, but I don't think so.
I had a friend named Kyle in high school that everybody knew and was really close with, but it wasn't the same. Like Ferris is just like oozes like charisma. Like he can talk someone who's agoraphobic into hanging out and skipping for a day and ruining his dad's car.
Yeah.
Like he fucks his life up for the entire future. Like I want a part 2 that's like a gritty like crime drama about Cameron and his dad's situation. Like it would just be something just like Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's it's interesting because what makes Cameron's dad a scary character is you never see him. The whole movie, you never see him.
he's the boogeyman.
Yeah, but it's like you see how like scarred and terrified Cameron, and like the way that Ferris was even describing his house, how he said his house is like a museum. It's cold and you can't touch anything.
Oh God,
Like, that's fucking terrifying.
that's not healthy. Like if we see Cameron's life, it's a drama. It's a hardcore drama. There's a I want to hear your thought on this. There's a theory that Ferris is in his mind. It's all Cameron. Like Cameron, like Ferris doesn't exist.
Oh,
Like it's just Cameron's day.
So is Sloane a real person then?
I think so. I can't remember.
Okay. I think that's the only thing that would be I would question that theory is like Sloane's character, because Sloane's character is like obviously Ferris's girlfriend.
Right.
And so like the one scene in particular where like I mean like some serious psychedelics, like because the scene where they pick her up from high school and he goes, "Do you have a kiss for daddy?"
God, I've heard that quote so many times.
Oh, yeah. They make out and then they get into the car and then they drive away. Like, what would be the purpose of Cameron hanging out with Sloane?
That's a great question. I don't know. I heard it on the internet where people were like, "What if Cameron actually imagined Ferris?"
Yeah, that would be weird.
Like Fight Club.
Oh, true. Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
But I think another really cool thing about this movie, and we'll play the box office game here in a second, but I really, really like the soundtrack in this movie. The soundtrack is like every single scene. You like, I just feel like I'm so entrenched in it. Like the one in particular I think about, and I'll do this literally to this day at work, at home, is the very opening scene where he like sits up and he goes, They bought it. Yeah. And then he like opens up the curtains and stuff and it just shows like a beautiful blue day outside. He's like, how could I be expected to go to school on a day like this? And then it's like, in your mind, you're like, you shouldn't. Don't go to school. Fuck school. It's like,
go hang out with your friends.
Right. Yeah.
Go joyriding.
Right. Yeah. But that being said, let's go ahead and play
the box office game.
Takeaways are.
All right. So 1986. The fun thing about the 80s was there were a lot of original ideas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like it's
like Starship Troopers?
No, that was the 90s.
Shit.
Oh, well. Okay. So some of these
weird movies.
All right. Some of these I was actually pretty surprised by. I've seen them, but I'm still just like, okay. So in no particular order, I almost said the order. Back to School.
Who's in that?
Rodney Dangerfield. Hey, so did my wife.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Which
Back to School?
Yeah, Back to School. It's where he goes back to college. He has to get a degree, and he's this old geezer. He's just like, hey, sweetie, I should have met you when you were, I don't know. I have no idea. Tell me when you're ready. Crocodile Dundee.
Oh, that was a good
That's
one.
That's a knife.
That's not a knife.
That's a knife. Karate Kid Part 2.
Oh, that's got to be the close to number one.
That's a good one. That's a good movie. Aliens, which is that's a fun movie.
That's a great movie.
Game over, man. Game over. Let's see. And then
sucked out of the ship.
And then your movie in your top 10.
Okay.
Top Gun.
Oh.
Top Gun came out in 1986.
Wow. And then, of course, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Mm-mm.
No, it's on the list?
Not in the top 5, no.
What?
I know.
Let me guess. Ice Ages?
Oh my god.
Okay, all right. I got my list.
Okay, go for it.
So number 1, and just tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah.
Number 1, Karate Kid 2.
No.
Why? It makes perfect sense. I suck at
Top
this game.
Gun. Top Gun's number 1.
I added a 2.
Okay.
What's 2?
Crocodile Dundee.
Oh, okay. 3 had Aliens.
Karate Kid.
I'm so terrible at this game. 4, I had Back to School.
Yes.
Let's go. Okay, I got
And
one.
5 was
Yeah,
Aliens.
it's fine. All right.
I almost want to make like a montage.
Of how terrible I am at
No,
this
just
game.
like every box office game so far, and just show like almost like a timer.
Yeah.
Just being like ding, ding, ding.
It's a fun game because it's interesting to think about, like, because you can think about, like, okay, let me try and think of an example. There's movies that I feel like aged really well,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to think of an example of that. So, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is movies that aged really well, but maybe weren't like initially taken as well. So like when they first released, like people were like, eh, but then gradually through time, people were like, oh my god, this is a cool classic.
Princess Bride.
Sure, yeah, I think that's a great example. It's like a movie that immediately people are like, eh, whatever, that's kind of weird, and then through time, it's like this is iconic,
Yep.
you know. And it's always interesting to see like the opposite effect of that, of like what movies grossed a crap ton, and then just
Oh, there are
nothing.
tons of examples where you just look in the past and you're like, how is that popular? No one talks about that anymore.
Well, like The Karate Kid is a great movie,
Mhm.
right, with Ralph Macchio, and but the thing is like when you think about its relevance today, I was actually just laughing about this because, so have you seen the Netflix show at all?
Cobra Kai, I need to check it out. It's
So
on my list.
I've seen a couple of episodes, and if you've seen it, I'm going to apologize because I'm probably going to butcher this, but like the premise from one of my friends, I was like, you have to watch the show because it's nothing like the original Karate Kid. Like
That's what I heard.
there's some elements to it, but it's pretty different because like the premise is the guy that ran the Cobra Kai dojo is
Mhm.
like a good guy
Johnny.
now. Yeah. And but the thing is that's like I was looking at it was like the original Karate Kid. It's like, okay, so good guy versus bad guy, but then the bad guy became a good guy, but now there's a new bad guy, but he's gonna be a good guy.
That's true, yeah.
It's like, damn it, that's the same thing.
There's a lot of theories that Ralph Macchio's character was like the villain of the story, which I think is pretty funny.
That is hilarious.
It's pretty funny.
That's such a funny thing to think about in a lot of different movies. The one in particular, I don't know if he's necessarily the villain, but going back to Top Gun, Maverick is not.
Oh god,
no,
he's awful.
It's not. No,
I
he's
break
not-
all the rules.
Exactly. Yeah. To be clear, and if you haven't seen Top Gun Maverick, you should go see it. It's a great movie. Iceman wins Top Gun.
Yeah, people
Maverick-
forget that though.
Yeah, Maverick does not win Top Gun. Second point. Does not win Top Gun. Breaks every fucking rule, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
when his teacher gets mad at him, he goes, "I'll sleep with you, fine."
Yeah.
Like there's no, it's just frustrating. And then I won't give too much away from Top Gun Maverick because I want to review that. But I feel like it's the same thing in the Karate Kid, where it's like some of the stuff that Ralph Macchio does as characters. It's like, well, yeah, they're mad at you because you just beat them up on the beach.
Yeah, and that kick at the very end is actually illegal. Like karate experts were like, "Oh no, he wouldn't have won. He kicked him in the face. You can't fucking kick people in the
You
face.
can't do that. Yeah.
You get out."
And especially too where it's like the scene before that, there's a literal scene where the guy's like, okay, we're gonna break the rules and do something illegal, but the move that ends the movie that's also illegal, don't worry about it.
Totally fine.
Totally fine.
Totally fine. That's like with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Is it's just like that's also in the 80s. Like this.
Yeah.
This is definitely an example of a movie that really got everybody talking.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too because I asked my parents who grew up in the 80s like what they think about Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and to
Mhm.
them it's like it was just kind of another movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that kind of like they hung on to.
I could see that though because it was like right around that time Weird Science came out,
Oh,
Breakfast
I
Club
was gonna say
came
Breakfast
out,
Club, yeah.
Risky Business came out. So you had all these movies about teenagers doing teenage stuff that it'd be really easy to see the trailer and be like, it's just another teenage movie.
That's true. What did Matthew? Do you know what he did, Matthew Broderick, to follow this movie? Like, what was his next big appearance?
I don't, but I can definitely look it up.
Look it up for me real quick,
Okay.
because That was one of the other things that I thought was really interesting is like if you look at someone's career in the 80s that really kicked off, like Tom Cruise as an example, he did Top Gun and then after that did the Mission Impossible saga, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like he arced a whole other like, I'm Tom Cruise, I'm going to make Tom Cruise movies. And maybe I just don't know Matthew Broderick's filmography very well.
I know he did Lion King.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he was
Simba.
He was adult Simba.
Tom Cruise is a great example of someone that like his career, like he kept success like going.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like he appeases a very specific genre of like action, immediate climax, resolution type of movies. I mean, maybe I guess there's other movies where he's done like drama.
Yeah, he did Collateral with Jamie Foxx. I recently watched that. So fucking good.
Really? Wow.
Like the way he pulls out a gun. Like I guess experts have been like, "Dude, the freeze frame, it's so good." So after Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he did a movie called Project X. He did a movie he was uncredited called She's Having a Baby. A lot of movies of just like nothing until Glory in 1989, which got nominated for Academy Award, where he played like some kind of like slave owner who.
I mean, that was only a couple years later, so that's not like terrible.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a lot. It's just it wasn't until like Lion King in '94 and then Cable Guy in '96.
That's right. Yeah, Cable Guy.
Godzilla in '98. Like it's.
What's his most recent?
Let's see. Let's see. He did a Talking Cat on Rick and Morty. Morty. He did a show called Painkiller about the origins of the opioid crisis. Sounds fun, by the way. Opioid crisis. I think that's on Netflix. 6 episodes of that.
Interesting.
And he was a reader for the Gettysburg Address. So
interesting.
Really going well.
The thing is he obviously I thought was a very great, amazing lead actor in the movie. Like he just did a great job of kind of like selling that as himself.
Yeah.
But it's like you think about other people that like kind of debuted in this movie too. Like I don't feel like a ton of stuff happened for them except for Charlie Sheen.
Yeah,
is in this movie.
He supposedly, I read some trivia. He supposedly stayed up for like 48 hours to play the role because he
insane.
really wanted to be like tired and looking drugged out. So
he did a great job.
I mean, he was probably doing coke at the time. But like,
easily.
Supposedly, he was like, "Yeah, I just stayed up for 48 hours and just made myself sleepy. I got tired blood in me."
What do you think he did after that movie?
Crashed.
Just fell asleep.
He did a movie called Hot Shots, where it was making fun of Rambo, and that was pretty popular. And then he did a Hot Shots 2, which was pretty popular, but like I don't know. For the cast, I really think Matthew Broderick really went with it. Like, that was someone that really went like pretty far.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just kind of like, you know, trying to do stuff, having bit parts.
Yeah. The thing too, I feel like what was different in the 80s versus now is, and maybe this isn't true, but I feel like a lot of people didn't necessarily like jump right into like acting.
No.
It seemed like there was a lot of other stuff going on. Like if you look at like some of the big actors from that time period, well, you also have like the people that just like trickle out of SNL, you know, like Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, like
David Spade.
And that, because like when you think about that era, a lot of them started with not SNL but with stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like their catapult into SNL, into stardom. And so I feel like for a lot of other people that made that a lot easier, because Matthew Broderick probably only had that one role to reference. And so if you think about like, okay, the one thing I can do is be a leading actor that's super charismatic. Like I feel like he falls into a bucket of a lot of other people that probably just have a lot more history doing it.
Exactly.
Where if you're like a SNL alum, like you have SNL to always call back to as like, I've done all this live work, which is, I've heard stuff about working on SNL.
Oh, that it's like, just, it's so stressful.
Yeah.
And like people will stab each other over bits. And spend like weeks on end trying to get something going. But if you're a friend of Lauren, then
Lauren Michaels,
then immediately it's just like,
I heard something really, really tragic about it. So I love SNL. It's probably my favorite show of all time. And I just like how the cast members, you can see the type of impact they have. But in particular, I love the cast members that start as writers and become cast members. So a couple different examples of that is, I believe Seth Meyers was a writer and then came on Weekend Update. Jason Sudeikis is one of them, was a writer, came on as a cast member. And then John Mulaney.
Bill Hader too.
John Mulaney wasn't really a cast member, I feel like. He was more of just a writer for the majority of his time on there. But so Jason Sudeikis in particular, he told everyone it was his last season. He was wrapping up. They were getting to like the end of TV season basically. And so he wrote this bit or sketch, and it was a funny sketch. And he's like, basically, I was a DJ and I was like playing all these songs at this wedding, but I would play everyone out with like all these different songs. And like, he was like, honestly, it was pretty shitty. But he's like, it made it through to dress, which is dress rehearsal, which is basically like a show before the show to see what bits land. And Lauren Michaels apparently has like a really hard and fast rule that's like, even if you think it's funny, if the audience doesn't, you're wrong. And it's like, he wouldn't change his mind. And he did the DJ thing, but what he put in the bit was him playing himself out of the show. So it was like it was kind of cool.
That's
it was like
pretty cool though.
Yeah,
It's a swan song.
Exactly. And it went through dress rehearsal. People loved it. And he went to Lauren's office and he's like, yeah, we're going to cut that, Jason. It's like he never got to do his send-off thing. And it's like, I feel like he was on the show for
a long time.
5+ years.
He was on the show for a long time. Like he talked about, I watched him with an interview. And he was like, SNL always seemed like, I guess he was part of Second City or something. Yeah. And SNL was like, he kept trying for SNL. And he was like, no, fuck it. I'm not going to do SNL. And when they finally asked, he's like, I almost turned them down. Like the hot girl that's finally into you. And he's just like, he's like, I don't know. I guess maybe like, but like when he first did his first episode, he was in Vegas and he was watching it at home and he like cried. Cause he's like, I finally did this. Like, I can't believe it. So he is, he's another person that like writing wise, and if you've ever seen the show
Ted Lasso,
he is amazing in it. Like, been nominated for stuff. So I think that you're completely right with that. With a lot of comedians, they have a body of work to show.
Exactly.
But like, if you're known as the charismatic guy, like if I'm Matthew Broderick and I'm going up against Tom Cruise, guess who's probably gonna win? Guess who's probably gonna get the role?
One thing about how many people fall into that demographic, like it's not just Tom Cruise. Like it's Tom Cruise, it's Val Kilmer, it's like a billion other people from the 80s, like Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like I could go on and on and on. And then like Matthew Broderick is just another variation of that.
Right.
And it's like the really unfortunate thing is actually something interesting I wanted to talk to you about is the way that Hollywood perceives work history, basically. Yeah. So there was this group of YouTubers that started, I think, in 2010. And did you ever watch any of the Freddie Wong videos?
No.
So the reason why it was so iconic is because at the time he was getting like probably tens of 20 of millions of views every single video. Whoa. And this is when YouTube had been out for like maybe 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, because YouTube came out in 2006.
Yeah, so, but he was like the first, like one of the first. Obviously, there's like a billion others. Like there's Ray William Johnson and Smosh and like all those like iconic people. But he was it was like consistency, like just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like. Not even hundreds of thousands of subscribers, like consistently. But they did a switch in YouTube where it was like the adpocalypse that they talked about, but they switched it to like the algorithm loved you based off of watch time and not click rate. So like historically, if you clicked on the video, that's all that counted. And the algorithm loved that and it would recommend your videos to it turned into watch rate or watch time was more important.
Yeah.
So the problem with that is the Freddie Wong videos, they used to be like no more than like a minute and a half. Like they were just like shorts now on YouTube. It's what they would be. And so they decided to, because they were making a lot of money doing these videos, they switched to do an actual, like one of the first TV shows on YouTube called Video Game High School.
I've heard about that.
Yeah. But the problem is they shot all this stuff. It was like a real thing. Like they had trailers and hired actors and everything was paid. And like, it was basically a real show. Like not even basically, it was a real show.
Right.
But once the show ended and he tried to get literally anything in Hollywood in terms of like the director's role, because it was YouTube, nothing counted. And I was curious your opinion on that.
I think that things have changed now because of with TikTok and Instagram and everything, because now it's very much like, what's the market? Like, how many followers do you have?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, you have a back catalog of thousands of videos and people are really interested in what you're doing. Hollywood's going to come to you. Like I've seen, there was a show on Hulu recently where it was like Influencers Island, and it's
influencers.
Just, it's all just social media, like influences.
Yeah.
So I think if that show came out now, Hollywood would be able to see everything that they're doing, because back then, like, there was obviously companies, but now it's just so much. Like, there's so many streaming services that I feel like had that come out now, he could have gotten an agent or someone from some streaming service would have been able to pick that up. So my thought is, like, unfortunately, bad timing.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting thought to know. And I think you're exactly right. I think it's a timing thing, how much of that work actually would translate. Because,
unfortunately,
well, yeah, think about it back then. It's like, what are the big streaming services or places someone could go to pitch their ideas? Where now it's like you have Hulu, Vudu, Apple, Amazon, HBO, Netflix. Like, there's so many places I feel like you can go. Obviously, they're still going to be like really selective, but you can just throw shit out of the wall and hope it lands.
And it'll land.
Yeah. And it's just tricky because it's like, I feel like everyone would view certain bodies of work differently.
Yeah.
And so going back to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it's one of those things where, like we were mentioning, he's not doing anything like super different besides the fact that he just plays someone that's incredibly charismatic very well.
Right. And it's a pretty simple script. Like, that's something that a lot of people also like about it is it's pretty simple. It all happens in one day. Like, it's exciting. There's a lot of energy in the movie, which is great. Really good soundtrack.
Yeah.
So it's one of those movies that, like, it happened and then caught on. Like, a lot of people really liked it. It's just that in that time period, like your parents, there were a ton of teenage movies coming out.
True. Yeah, like License to Drive.
Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, Lost Boys.
Yep.
Like, yeah, there's a lot going on.
So that's the hard part with it. And it kind of makes me think, like, if it came out now, I don't think it would go to theaters. I think it would have went to like a Netflix or an HBO Max or...
Yeah, because like think about how different it would have to be, because like you would have to have an element of social media.
Yeah.
Like,
oh,
happening.
God. Ferris would have like a TikTok.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, all right, guys, so here's how you get out of school.
Well, let's be honest. If you're going to give the Riddler a TikTok and the new Batman movie, Ferris is going to have a TikTok. Well, so the other question I wanted to ask you that is like incredibly original with this movie specifically is there was never a part 2 or Ferris Bueller's Day Off 2.
Yeah.
For its level of success, like think about any cult classic, like there's almost always a part 2, like Terminator, Jurassic Park, like any of these movies in the 80s, Top Gun, even recently, like there is a, do you think that'll ever happen in the future? And if so, why not?
Well, I mean, while you were talking, I thought about Princess Bride. They've never made a sequel for Princess Bride. They've never made a sequel to License to Drive. They've never made a sequel to, as far as I know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So I think it's just one of those things where it's like, it's hard to find out where you go with it.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound dark, but all the actors are still alive.
True.
I think if one of them died, like they might use that IP and be like, all right, well, it's Cameron's story. Ferris died. Like Cameron's grandson has a TikTok.
Yeah. It would be really hard to do that movie now, I feel like. But one of the things that they did do is they had a Super Bowl ad. Did you ever see that with Matthew Broderick?
I did not know.
So yeah, it was a Super Bowl ad, and he's laying in bed, and his agent calls him, and he goes, Matthew, we need you to do this certain thing, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, I can't. I'm really sick.
Wait, was that recent?
It was a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think I do remember some of
I think it was a Booking.com commercial.
Oh,
Hi,
God, yeah.
Booking.com.
Hey,
if you could sponsor the JNZ podcast.
We'd love that.
JNZ podcast.
Please book us.
But yeah, he like answers the phone. He goes, oh, I'm sick, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, they bought it. And then and then it's like the Ferris Bueller's Day Off in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason probably why it doesn't get a part 2, because like you probably had one of the most original ideas, which is like Cameron's grandsons, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, my great grandpa skipped school one time. Like it would have to be, it couldn't just be part 2, because it's like, what is he, like
Be a reboot.
yeah. I mean, there's some movies that I feel like you are just grabbing at straws, and like there's a couple of examples that come to mind. Is the second Mask movie?
We don't talk about that one with Jamie
Right.
Kennedy. We don't talk about that one.
Or Dumb and Dumberer.
Yeah, there's some movies where it's like, because I've heard people talk like, oh, well, why wasn't there a sequel? And it's like, I don't think it needed to have a sequel. Like people are like, well, Napoleon Dynamite needed a sequel. Why?
Yeah.
Why did it need a sequel? Some movies, it's just like, I think we live in an age where like if you don't have a sequel set up, you failed.
That's fair.
If you don't have a trilogy set up, you failed.
Yeah.
You can't just
You gotta milk
you
that.
gotta have another idea.
Okay,
You
don't do that.
you gotta have another idea. You gotta have a whole setup for it. So
That's an interesting thought. Like, I'm so curious as to how someone would pitch. Like, I guess so. What's funny is it's like when you think about the difference.
and you know it's been pitched before. Ferris Bueller's Day Off too.
Absolutely.
Oh God,
It has to have been. So, but like, think about how like, and you probably know this better than I would. But like, if you're pitching, let's say, a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like writing a movie in itself is a lot. So it's like you have the script, right? No actors, nothing established. But then it's like you have a whole, like, do you just have a premise or a plot?
It depends on who you're trying to pitch to. Because so with some companies or some places, like you could just give them the pitch, and they're like,
Oh, okay.
"That's awesome." Like, let's see a script, or they're like, "Here's all this money, make this movie."
Yeah.
But with other times, like you could have a script and be like, "Here's a script," and they're like, "Do you have a star attached?" No. All right, dumpster it is.
I feel like too, like in my assumption is it really just comes down to how you sell it. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'll use a show as an example. It's Always Sunny in
I
Philadelphia.
love that show.
It's a show about nothing.
And it's a show about awful people. That's the thing. Their premise for that show was you want to ask someone for sugar,
Yeah.
but that person tells you that they have cancer, but you still need that sugar.
Right.
So they're like, I have cancer. And you're like, oh, that's awful.
But just
You
like half a
still-
cup.
Do you still have that sugar?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was their premise. That was what they sold FX on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny because it's like it's still today, it's still going on.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
It's such an amazing show. But yeah, I think it's hard to sell because again, like going back to how you would pitch Ferris Bueller's Day Off 2,
Mm-hmm.
it's so not original at this point.
No.
And I feel like the only time you can pitch an idea that's not original is if you go, hey, so this is going to be Thor and the Hulk 19.
Yes.
Look at all of this money that we've made you previously. This is just the 19th variation of that. So money, please.
Yeah, I always use the example that you made where it's like taking out a loan.
Yeah.
Like the new Thor movie coming out next month knows it's going to make
Was
its
it
money
Love
back.
and Thunder? I think.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
fucking Minions. Like I went and saw
Oh,
Doctor
God,
Strange
yeah.
2 again.
Yeah.
And fucking Minions. Like Lose Yourself was used on the soundtrack. That song needs to be done with. Sabotage by Beastie Boys played
Yeah.
while the Minions were squeaking. That song needs to
God.
be burned. I
Yeah.
hate that's a movie where it's like, oh, Despicable Me, that's original.
Yeah.
Those yellow creatures, can we make 5 of those?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. We need 5 Despicable Me movies.
Yeah.
And we need 3 of those yellow looking fucks.
Well, the unfortunate thing too is like there's like, so I think back to when I was a kid and the animated movies that I had, I thought were great.
Oh yeah.
Like Hercules, Pocahontas, Mulan,
classic.
yeah, so good. But even today, it's still really good.
Mhm.
Like Tangled and Moana and like Coco, like all those are great movies.
No sequels.
Why the fuck do we need a 5th Minions movie? When like I'll take Moana 2 any day of the week over a 19th
I don't
Minions
understand
movie.
it. I really don't. Like people were laughing in the audience and I was just like,
Why?
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 I don't get it. I really like
Yeah.
but I think it's one of those things where I was watching that trailer and I was like, well, I made my parents go see the Yu-Gi-Oh movie.
Your
So
move.
yeah, I made them pay full price to see
Yeah.
the Yu-Gi-Oh movie.
True.
So I made my parents watch a lot of garbage.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you know what? That's their thing now. Minions are their thing. But it's like what you said. If you don't have something set up for sequels, like there's going to be a Joker 2. Like,
Yeah.
like it's just like with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it's really hard
Yeah.
to just keep that. That was like the 80s were a time where you could just really release singular movies and not
Sure.
have it set up for anything.
Yeah, and I feel like you can kind of do that now,
Mhm.
but for me it feels like the major difference, and I don't know, maybe this isn't the case, but it feels like actors now are really easily creating their own communities.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of people and I don't know, I didn't grow up in the 80s, so maybe this is true, but like they're going to see a movie because specific people are in it.
Yep.
Which I feel like is always the case.
Yep.
Like my dad has a huge love crush on Brad Pitt. Anything Brad Pitt is in, he's probably going to go see it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like you get to know an actor better because of social media. So it's like you follow their Instagram or you see their TikToks or things like that. And that's also very apparent in like when they do something wrong.
Oh yeah.
Like Will Smith.
Yeah.
He caught hands with Chris Rock and all of his movies got paused. Like all of his followings like plummeted and that like people reacted to that. Where it's like now one of the movies that came out, Red Notice, with Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Ryan Reynolds, if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score is like, I don't know, 39% or something really low, and the audience score is like 94%.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it. It's a good movie, but it's just one of those things where it was like, did you like the movie or did you like Ryan Reynolds?
I
Like,
think it falls into the liking the stars.
yeah.
Like with Matthew Broderick, like I bet there was probably some people that had seen him from earlier stuff. Like Michael J. Fox, like we did Back to the Future. Please check out our Back to the Future episodes.
Right.
But there's probably a following for Family Ties where they watch
true,
Family Ties
yeah.
and they're like, dude, I love that guy and he's gonna do Back to the Future.
Yeah.
So I think it is one of those things where it's like, depending on who's attached, like even back then it was like, no, I want to see them because they're on my TV in my living room,
Right.
and now they're on the theater in my hometown.
It's so funny too because I feel like that still kind of translates today where it's like I bet you people are finding celebrities, not even like actors in particular and actresses, not just from seeing them through a movie, but through potential social media. Like, oh, that TikTok that Will Smith did was really, really funny. I'm going to go see blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like that can happen a lot of times where it's like you fall in love with an actor or actress through a social media platform, then go see their movies where it's like, that never would have happened.
No, that's kind of how I feel about The Rock. Like, even
Yeah.
though there's like a ton of movies that I'm like, like I still like watching his Instagram videos and his posts. Like, it pumps me up, but I completely agree with your thought though.
Yeah. Well, so I think to kind of begin to close things out with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, two questions that we usually ask, which is removing a scene
Gotcha.
from the movie and then giving it a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. Let's start with removing the scene. I'll go first to give you a second to think about it.
Yeah.
I think as though a lot of these scenes were very comedic, I probably could do away with one of the scenes with the principal like hunting him down.
Yeah.
Arrested.
Arrested.
Yeah. I there was one, it was kind of creepy. The one where he's in the arcade and he's walking up to what he thinks is Ferris, but ends up being this girl, and he like grabs her and he's like, gotcha. And it's like, and then, but the funny part of that scene is he sits down, he orders a beer or something, and the TV is playing a baseball game next to him, and him and Cameron just caught a ball in the outfield, and they're like, yeah, Chicago. And it's like, if he was just watching the TV, like, that's the funny part in that scene. But I feel like that scene, the bus scene, where he like sits down on the bus at the very end of the movie.
It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah,
especially like
you want any gummy bears?
Like,
they're all warm.
the actor had some sketchy stuff happen too. So those kids scenes, I'm like, oh, it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I'd say like because the car gets stolen, right? If I'm remembering right, the car gets stolen by the two delivery guys, and they like jumping off of something.
Well, yeah. I mean, technically, I guess it is stolen, but yeah, they park in the garage, and then he's like, Cameron's like, oh, I'm really worried he's going to screw up the car. He's like, don't worry, I gave him a 5. He's going to take good care of it. And then you see him in the back shot whip around this corner, and his friend just jumps in, and then they peel off, and then the Star Wars theme starts playing.
Like, I get that scene, but I probably would have taken it out because I don't know how hardcore it would have affected the movie if that scene got removed.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
So I don't know that scene. It's just kind of like, who are they? Oh, okay. Well, I kind of like when we've watched certain movies where I'm like, let's go back to the other thing. Let's go back to the other thing. I want to see the other thing.
Right.
Bring me back to the people I like.
Right. Yeah. And the director's like, whoa, hey, Czar, hey, don't pay attention to this over here. Look right here. Look right here.
God, it's just like you're just looking at your watch. Like, all right, so when does Ferris show up?
Yeah. Yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 10, for me, I think this is like a perfect 8. A perfect 8. because for me, what brings this score up is watchability. I think there's a lot of
It's like what
different
we talked
factors.
about with like the 1 to 10.
Right, yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into a good movie. Watchability isn't necessarily one that makes it a 10 out of 10 and makes it a 1 out of 10,
Yeah.
but it definitely, in some ways, can raise a score. And I could have this movie on 24/7, 7 days a week.
It's just like what we were talking about last week. Please watch our last video, The Last Jedi. It's like what we were talking about last week, though, where it's like there are certain movies that you can watch over a cup of coffee.
Right.
Like Avatar. We watched Avatar. Check out our Avatar video.
Right.
But you can watch Avatar over a cup of coffee. Like Straight Outta Compton or Boys in the Hood, you can't.
No.
But Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I mean, that's a movie that's like a comfort movie for people
Right.
who are sick also. Like Princess Bride. We did a Princess Bride video. So I'd say it's a good 7. Like I definitely think it's a movie that like younger kids are really gonna like. And I think even teenagers, like the whole like the diamond in the ass, like if you shoved coal, that's like, ooh, you said ass. Ooh. Like, so I do think that this is it's a good 80s movie.
Yeah.
There are other ones that I like more though, that have to do with the kind of the same
Premise. Yeah.
premise, but you know, that's for another day.
Yeah, I agree. I think, too, one of the big things that made it such a high score for me is the movie moves really fast.
It does. There's no dragging. Like
Yeah.
even, like I had a pull for the driving part.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is I love a movie that's really quotable. Like, that's what I really appreciate about 80s movies is, although, yes, very cheesy, it's so much quotable. There's so many things you can quote from, like, Top Gun, Terminator, Weird Science. Like there's like just perfect one-liners, but it's like I like that because it's nothing anyone would say in person basically, or not in a movie.
So we've talked about this before, really, but do you think that like younger people still watch this movie? Like, would your younger brothers watch it?
Younger people.
I just think that show is so yeah.
I don't know. I think it's hard to say because, like, think about movies that they have now that is probably a better representation of their life.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is what makes you like a movie in some cases. So, like, my younger brother's favorite movie, one of his favorite movies, he's 14, is Ready Player One.
Oh.
And for him, it's very similar because it's about playing games and connected to a fantasy world and, like, solving a big problem. And there's, like, a love like relationship interest thing that's happening, and so things like that like connect to it more. And then there's also like a sense of nostalgia in that movie, where in this movie I think it would be hard for someone to just kind of, because the other thing too you have to think about, it's like it hasn't come out anytime soon. There's not gonna be any commercials on it or anything like that, and so it's like someone would have to go out of their way and be like clicking through Netflix and be like, oh, there's nothing else to watch, let's watch this Ferris whatever movie. So it's not like they're actively looking for it, where, you know, Ready Player One came out somewhat recently, and so I just think that's a big factor that comes into if a generation's gonna watch a movie. Top Gun is another example of, I think, would see a resurgence with the younger generation because Top Gun Maverick just came out. And so depending on who you are as a person, if you're a psychopath, you're just going to go see the movie. If you're a normal human being and not a part of the simulation, you're going to watch the first Top Gun, then you're going to go see Top Gun Maverick. And so it's like, I think there needs to be a level of like relevancy to have a specific generation watch it.
And I feel like it's even old for us. Like that's the thing.
It is,
Like I try to think about is I'm like, well, this is old for me. So for your younger siblings or anyone's younger siblings, it's like, this is ancient. Like this is watching something from the 50s for us.
Well, think about it. It came out, me as an example, 10 years before I was born. So I probably wouldn't have appreciated this movie until I was like 12. That's 22 years after it released.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I watched it is because my dad really likes it. And there's a lot of movies like that for me personally, like Top Gun, Secret of My Success is another example of that with Michael J. Fox. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. But it's one of those things where it's like you probably need to have someone recommend this movie. I don't think there's any reality, probably, where somebody just is like, God, you know what? I've had Ferris Bueller's Day Off on my like watch list, I should like that's just not gonna happen.
Like if your dad, if you didn't watch it with your dad, you probably would have no inkling to watch it by yourself.
Yeah, and I feel like that's true for a lot of people with a lot of different movies because there's so many fucking movies.
So many.
It's just impossible to pick
There's
one.
so many for us to watch for the podcast.
Yes, but I think this is a great point to segue out of the episode. This is fantastic. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is, again, probably one of my top 5 movies, I would say, of all time. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. Any final words for Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
I'd say check it out. That's all I got.
You can do better than that.
Okay. Speech. My friend Cameron didn't have any fun. Continue.
All day. Ladies and gentlemen, that's episode 17. Check us out on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube, go check us out on Spotify.
Check out our
subscribe,
TikToks.
like the videos, and we'll see you all next week. Adios.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.